And welcome again, everyone. My name is Emily Denoncourt with the Admission Office. I'm joined this morning by my colleague Katie Chu, who was just welcoming you and orienting you. So the plan for this morning is to take you through a presentation covering the learning profile of our students, the model of our program, and a lot of details about our curriculum. After that, we have a panel of faculty administrators joining us, followed by a panel of students who will be here to answer your questions and share their experiences. So I will just take a moment and share my screen with all of you. And just one moment while I get that set up.
Emily's screen should take up really the majority of your computer screen. If you find it's not quite large enough, if you scroll your cursor to the middle of the image of the young girl, that will pin the presentation so that it is taking up the majority of your viewing area. And again, feel free, if you'd like to turn your camera off and have your coffee, you're welcome to do so. And then again, at around 9:30, we'll shift gears and it'll be more collaborative portion of the presentation. It looks great, Emily.
Great, thanks again. So before we jump into the main portion of our presentation this morning, there are a couple of topics that I want to address. The first is an overview of our enrollment picture. Landmark School has a rolling application process with no hard deadline for submitting materials. This means that we are constantly receiving and processing new applications. Our elementary middle school is full for the current year, so all applications being processed are being processed for the coming 22-23 school year. Since it's November, it is still early in our admission season, and we are still strongly encouraging applications for all programs for next year. Having said that, we are experiencing very strong interest in both our elementary and middle school programs, and the middle school in particular, grades 6, 7, and 8. For that program, we have already received an unusually high volume of applications for next year. So as we start to make official acceptances for the 22-23 school year, if we begin to approach our capacity in a particular program, we will send out updates to all applicants in process to make families aware of that situation for your planning purposes. But again, as of right now, we are still encouraging all applications for the 22-23 school year. The other topic I want to address is the value we place on the health and safety of our community members, especially in light of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. All Landmark faculty and students have signed a pledge to follow our health and safety protocols, which right now include a vaccine mandate in place for all employees and students ages 12 and older. We're also doing daily health screenings and weekly pool testing for students and staff. Landmark follows guidance from the Massachusetts Department of Ed. We monitor updates from the Department of Public Health and the CDC and the World Health Organization. And so with these tools, we have maintained a very low case count with no evidence of on-campus transmission this year. So with those details out of the way, we'll jump into the main portion of our presentation, starting with a brief history of Landmark School. Landmark was founded in 1971 by a man named Dr. Charles Drake. Dr. Drake was a diagnostician as well as an educator, and he was also dyslexic himself. He grew up struggling with his own reading and writing skills, and over the years, he developed his own strategies as well as his own insights into his learning. This included an understanding built up over time of the underlying skills that made it hard for him to read, the skills that allow our minds to sound out words, retrieve spelling rules, read sentences fluently and automatically. And so in an effort to address these skills, Dr. Drake developed a strategy of creating small, manageable goals for himself. And as he accomplished each goal, he noticed that each experience of success, no matter how small, provided a powerful boost to his confidence and his motivation. And experiencing that for himself, he recognized just how important those small successes would be for any struggling learner. So Dr. Drake's experience understanding his own literacy development went on to inform the foundational teaching principles that we still use to this day. Landmark School educates bright students with language-based learning disabilities using a diagnostic prescriptive model, meaning that we are constantly diagnosing or updating our understanding of each student's learning needs and then prescribing the teaching methods that will meet them where they are. Direct instruction refers to our commitment to providing a one-on-one tutorial to every elementary and middle school student every day. This also includes a commitment to keeping our carefully grouped classes small in size, capped at 8 students maximum. Instruction is explicit and systematic. This involves explicitly identifying and breaking down the underlying skills needed to read and write, and by micro-uniting instruction, which means breaking down skills, information, and assignments into small, manageable chunks, creating attainable goals, which is how we provide those many opportunities for our students to experience academic success, naturally increasing their motivation and helping them to reinvest in and re-engage with their own learning. In 1971, we opened our doors to about 40 students. This year, we opened the school year with over 460 students, enrolled on 2 separate campuses. The presentation today focuses on our elementary middle school, a day school serving students in grades 2 through 8, with a current enrollment of 166 students. This includes an elementary program of 50 students in grades 2 through 5, and a middle school program of 116 students in grades 6, 7, and 8. We also have a separate high school campus located 3 miles away from our elementary middle school, which has a day program as well as a boarding program with a wonderful residential curriculum. So who are the students who come to Landmark? Landmark students are bright. They are intellectually curious, creative thinkers, good problem solvers with unique ideas, and the ability to make interesting connections between their ideas, between concepts they've learned in school and their own life experiences. We'll talk in greater depth about our students' cognitive profile in just a moment. Landmark students are also well-adjusted, which means that they generally get along well with peers and adults. They have good social awareness, and while some of our students really benefit from additional time to process social language, they're able to pick up on and interpret nonverbal social cues, and they're generally able to manage their day-to-day experiences and the typical stressors that kids have to deal with. Having said that, certainly some Landmark students are coming to us with some school-related anxiety and lowered self-esteem related to their previous school experiences. But they do have the emotional readiness and resilience and motivation to face their challenges and really work on the skills that are hardest for them once they are in a learning environment with teachers who care about them and understand how they learn and are meeting them where they are. Landmark students may also struggle somewhat with attention and focus, but they're able to respond well to redirection and are generally able to regulate their attention to a degree where it's not distracting to other students. And all Landmark students are diagnosed with a language-based learning disability. This is an umbrella term that encompasses a number of other terms or diagnoses you may have heard. It includes an IEP category of specific learning disability in reading or in writing. In terms of diagnoses you may have seen on a neuropsychological evaluation, it includes specific learning disorder with impairment in reading, also known as dyslexia, or specific learning disorder with impairment in writing, also known as dysgraphia. It can also encompass a diagnosis of a language disorder, and this is a term that refers to a broader range of language difficulties. So when talking about language disorders, it is important to note that Landmark's curriculum is designed to support a profile that is stronger in higher order receptive language, that comprehension, concept formation, and connection making, and weaker in expressive language, the retrieval and organizing and sequencing of language. And I'll talk a bit more about the strength that our students have in receptive comprehension next. And a bit later, we'll get into how we support expressive language skill development. So now we're going to move into a discussion of the cognitive profile that our curriculum supports. All of these terms appear on a particular cognitive assessment called the WISC, the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children. And this is one of our application requirements. So we'll start with these areas of strength listed up top here. So verbal comprehension refers to a strong conceptual understanding of the world around us. As I mentioned a moment ago, our students have wonderful and unique ideas and the ability to make connections, categorize, and associate their ideas. So perhaps your child loves stories and you hear them connecting something they heard in a story or saw in a movie to an experience in their own life. Or maybe they love the concepts they're learning in a nature science unit, and you've gone on a hike with them and you hear them connect something they see on the hike to something they're learning in that nature science unit. That higher order concept formation and connection making is a real strength for our students. Visual spatial thinking refers to the ability to perceive spatial relationships and work your way through visual information. So hands-on activities like building with Legos or woodworking or sculpting with clay or building a fort are great examples of activities that use visual spatial perception and processing, envisioning something in their minds and then being able to build or create or put the pieces together to create that vision. Fluid reasoning, so a strength in the area of fluid reasoning involves problem solving and logical thinking ability, the ability to generalize information from a specific context to a larger context, or the ability to recognize a pattern and predict what comes next. This area of thinking is also tied to math reasoning and understanding number concepts. So now we'll move on to the cognitive areas that are a relative weakness for our students, which tend to fall in the realms of working memory and or processing speed. Working memory refers to the ability to hold newly received information in the forefront of our minds and be able to work with that information in the moment. So what is our brain able to do with new information in the first 20 to 30 seconds after it receives that information through our senses? And here we're talking about two senses in particular, sight and sound. So visual memory and auditory memory, because these kinds of working memory are so important when it comes to language and language processing. A struggle with visual working memory can represent a struggle to hold on to words when copying information from the board or holding on to common spelling patterns. A struggle with auditory working memory can be a struggle to hold on to spoken language or holding on to the sounds and phonemes of language long enough to manipulate them, which has an impact on acquiring all kinds of reading and spelling skills. Processing speed here on the WISC is primarily referring to a kind of visual processing. How quickly our mind is able to recognize a visual symbol and make a connection between that symbol and what it means or what it represents. So this can involve scanning a row of symbols and quickly recognizing which are the same, or it can involve forming new connections and then storing and retrieving those connections. A related term that you may have seen in your child's testing is rapid naming. When we're naming letters or numbers, we're accessing a connection that our brain made previously between what that letter or number looks like, the visual symbol, and its name or its meaning. So it makes sense that a struggle or a weakness in these connections and the speed at which we can store and retrieve these connections affects the processing of language. That recognition of spelling patterns and syllable types and words and clauses. One real life example of this kind of processing that I think many of us can relate to is the experience of navigating around on your smartphone and scanning for a particular app icon. When you think about those tiny icons, your brain has previously stored a great deal of information that it associates with that tiny little visual symbol. But the speed of that storage and retrieval process when you're scanning and trying to find the right one and tap on it, that speed of that process can be very different for different people. So that's just one example of that relationship between processing speed and rapid naming, that rapid retrieval of language and information. So that's the cognitive profile of our students. And now we're going to shift into the model of our program and our curriculum, starting with a general overview of the daily schedule. Those students are dropped off this year between 7:30 and 7:45, and by 7:45, we have all students settled into their first period location for a virtual morning meeting, which takes place every day between 7:45 and 8 o'clock. During that time, there's usually one virtual meeting for elementary and a separate meeting going on for the middle school program, with the entire school coming together for a virtual morning meeting once a week. The morning meeting is an opportunity to provide important community announcements, calendar reminders. It's also an opportunity for some quick enrichment and community building activities like brain teasers or sharing an interesting historical fact or fun interviews with various faculty members. We have 8 periods in our school day. The academic and elective classes are 46 minutes long. There's 6 minutes of passing time between classes, and there's a 26-minute milk break, which is a term we use to refer to a recess and snack time built into the morning. The lunches are 30 minutes, and elementary students have a 20-minute recess after their lunch. The academic day ends at 3, and on some days we have afternoon activities that run from 3 to 4:30, and I'll talk about those offerings a little bit later. So moving on to a discussion of our faculty, Landmark has a large teaching faculty, which allows us to keep our student-teacher ratio low, one faculty member for every 3 students on campus. So in addition to appropriately supporting the number of students enrolled, that low ratio allows us to create opportunities for our faculty to support and mentor each other through professional development workshops and direct mentor-mentee relationships. We also have a partnership with Boston University's Wheelock College that allows us to offer a master's degree program in moderate special needs to our faculty. So any new faculty who do not yet have a master's would enroll in this program, meaning that all our faculty either have or are working towards a master's degree. An important and unique faculty role at Landmark is the academic advisor. The academic advisor carefully oversees each student's schedule, thinking about class placement and level of challenge. They're monitoring progress and coordinating an understanding of each student's learning profile among all of our departments here. And academic advisors are the main contact for parents. They act as a liaison between parents and teachers, helping to facilitate communication and compile updates on progress. So now we'll really start delving into the details of our curriculum here. Landmark's curriculum is skills-based, meaning that we are prioritizing the remediation of reading, writing, and speaking skills, emphasizing the processing and organizing of language across the curriculum, across all subject areas. We are also a program that is approved by the Massachusetts Department of Education, so our curriculum parallels the Massachusetts curriculum frameworks. This means that we're using those content area goals as our faculty write curriculum and lesson plans. They're thinking about those framework goals to facilitate the literacy and language development that is our priority. Within each program, so within elementary grades 2 through 5, or within middle school grades 6, 7, and 8, we group students in classes based on skill level and certain aspects of their learning profile. So sometimes this is subject specific, like looking at math skills for math classes or writing skill level for the language arts classes. But everyone is looking at basic literacy skill level overall, and then grade and age are considered as secondary factors. So we're most typically grouping students one grade up or down, but not grouping, for example, a second grader with a fifth grader or a sixth grader with an eighth grader. And the priority that we place on language skill development results in all of our classrooms being language-based classrooms. So this means that skill building relating to the 4 areas of literacy, reading, writing, speaking, and listening, that's woven throughout all subjects here. And we keep our class size low, about 4 to 7 students in our elementary classes and 6 to 8 students in our middle school classes. And it's this small class size, along with the grouping based on profile and skill level, that allow for the direct instruction, the direct cueing and checking in, and careful pacing and customized curriculum for each class grouping. So we're about to delve into specific descriptions of some of our classes, but I want to start with this general list of the subject areas that each landmark student has in their daily schedule. And one thing I want to emphasize is that out of the 6 academic classes that each student has, 3 of those classes, listed first here, the tutorial, the language arts class, and the oral expression literature class, those are specifically targeting different aspects of language skill development. And then we offer the rest of a typical core curriculum, rounded out by math, science, and social studies. All students have one elective period, which alternates with phys ed class. And the elementary students have a 30-minute enrichment period built into their schedule, which refers to a time for fun project-based activities or discussions. So perhaps a craft project relating to a theme from a science or social studies unit, or a discussion of an important topic like building and maintaining friendships. So now we'll begin discussing specific classes, starting with our tutorial class, which is the hallmark of a landmark education. This class is a one-on-one tutorial, which takes place every day, built right into each student's typical daily schedule, which means that this is not a pull-out model. No one feels like they're doing something different from everyone else or missing instruction in order to go to tutorial. Having a one-on-one tutorial also means that the instruction for this class is completely individualized for each student. This is a class where that diagnostic prescriptive model we talked about really comes into play. We're using formal and informal assessment measures, both at the point of admission and at the start of the school year, to construct an individualized tutorial program for each student that addresses goals across an array of reading and writing skills. Tutors use daily lesson plans not only for instruction, but also to assess individual skills, identify the most pressing needs, and determine when to move on to new skills. The academic advisor, who we talked about earlier, they also work closely with the tutor to monitor progress and update each student's diagnostic goals and think about different methodologies that would be appropriate to bring into tutorial. Landmark's teaching methods are based in a speech-to-print approach. For so many of us, we were introduced to reading by first being taught the letters of the alphabet, what their names are, and the most common spoken sound or sounds for each letter. In contrast, speech-to-print, that approach teaches the sounds of spoken language first. So helping students identify individual speech sounds or phonemes, differentiate between them, and categorize them based on how the sound is made or what your mouth looks like or feels like while it's making a particular sound. This approach provides students with a more complete understanding of how the English language works, how and why it breaks down into sounds and syllables and other linguistic patterns. To support this approach, we train all of our teachers and tutors with materials and methodologies from the Lindemood Bell LIPS program. So while not every student is using LIPS methods in tutorial, the training provides a shared language and a shared framework that follows students and connects instruction from class to class, teacher to teacher, and from one grade level to the next. In addition, we pull from a number of other teaching methods that are systematic, sequential, and multisensory, providing intensive remediation for a range of skills, from phonemic awareness, that foundational ability to process and distinguish the individual sounds of language, to strategies for decoding unfamiliar words, learning to recognize linguistic patterns, spelling principles, and sight words, building up reading fluency, or how quickly students can read accurately and expressively, and then developing comprehension strategies and writing skills. So that is our tutorial class, again, provided one-on-one to every student every day. The next few slides move on to discussing several of our small group classes. And again, these would be classes of 4 to 7 students in our elementary program and 6 to 8 students in our middle school program. So language arts class at Landmark refers to a highly structured approach to the writing process. Our language arts classes are based around engaging thematic units like the Olympics or Shackleton's exploration of Antarctica. The thematic units generate the shared vocabulary and content that becomes the basis for our students' writing. Graphic organizers are used at every level: brainstorming, sentence writing, paragraph development, and multi-paragraph essay writing to provide that visual scaffolding for sentence grammar and syntax, as well as the organizing and sequencing of ideas. One especially unique feature of these language arts classes is the heavy focus on collaborative sentence writing, which really allows us to delve into the heart of language functioning. For so many of our students, they are coming to us without automaticity at the sentence level. So maybe they have an understanding of basic sentence structure, but so often they were never given the opportunity to master writing a detailed, elaborate, powerful sentence to the point where it's automatic for them. So for at least the first half of the year, sentence writing is done in class, collaboratively, every day to build up that automaticity at this foundational level. Our students are analyzing and diagramming the basic requirements of simple sentences, learning about parts of speech, how words function, how clauses and phrases function, and then slowly adding in elaboration step by step, learning to make their writing as clear and powerful as they want it to be. Landmark's language arts classes also teach cursive writing to all students, and I want to take a moment to explain why we feel cursive is so important to teach. Our philosophy on cursive is rooted in the idea that cursive is important because it strengthens the language processing pathways in the brain. So we understand, society today might not require the skill of cursive. It might not be used as much, but the teaching of it, the learning of it is so powerful and important for what it does for those language processing pathways. Research studies show that cursive helps minimize reversals and that the spelling of a word is stored in the brain more firmly when the word is formed using a continuous movement of the hand. Studies involving MRI images of brain activity show that writing in cursive causes interaction between the right and left hemispheres of the brain. That's a kind of activity that is not as present during printing or typing. So this kind of interaction, engaging both hemispheres at once, is associated with improved language and memory function. So that's our language arts curriculum focusing on written expression. We'll now move on to another aspect of language processing, oral expression. This class works on a range of speaking skills, and it's also supported by research that shows that when we speak, we are activating and strengthening specific language pathways in the brain, which support comprehension. So, if you've ever experienced that need to just talk something through with someone or have a conversation and bounce an idea off of someone, you've experienced the power that oral expression has to help crystallize an idea or organize information in our minds and deepen our comprehension. So in this class, we're using literature and thematic units again as the content to facilitate this skill building. There's an opportunity to practice and reinforce the grammar and syntax and vocabulary development that's happening in the language arts classes, but it's folded into the expectations of spoken language, including specific work on skills like narrative sequencing, telling a story or reporting an event or a personal experience, comparing and contrasting information, explaining a process or a procedure, and appropriately sharing and supporting an opinion. So that is oral expression. And now we'll move on to math, the math curriculum here at Landmark. This math curriculum at Landmark's elementary middle school was designed by our math department head, Christopher Wooden. It's a curriculum specifically designed for students with language-based learning disabilities, and it's designed to support the strengths and weaknesses associated with the cognitive profile we talked about earlier. So it takes advantage of our students' strength in fluid reasoning, in concept formation, by introducing a big picture concept first, and then going back to fill in the details and the steps, which relieves the burden that math can place on working memory by meaningfully chunking math concepts and procedures using things like movement and symbolic imagery to help that storage and retrieval of information. I'll give a few examples of this, one at the elementary level and one at the middle school level. So at the early elementary level, students might be working on a subtraction problem by using large laminated cards with arrays of dots on each card representing different numbers, similar to the arrays of dots you would see on dice. Each student would have the opportunity to select 2 cards, and the class would work together to figure out what those cards added up to. And then they would lay the cards on the ground and physically take 1 card away while practicing the language of what they were doing out loud. So if they chose 4 and 5, the class together would add those numbers to make 9, and the student whose turn it was would say out loud, 9 minus 4 equals 5, while physically removing the 4 dot icon card. And with that movement, that kinesthetic input, reinforcing that concept that subtraction means taking away. A significantly more advanced example at the middle school level involves plotting points on a plane and introducing the concept of the equation for slope. So students learning this lesson use a huge grid. It's a huge contraption made of rope with an X and Y axis that takes up an entire wall. The vertical ropes on the grid are actually pulleys that the students can use to hoist colorful flags up to plot points on the grid. So each student has the opportunity to plug a number into the equation, calculate the point, and then count over and up to the appropriate flag and hoist it to the right point. Once all the students have taken a turn, they can see that their flags all line up in a sloping line that shows the shape of the equation they were working with. I don't know about you, but I just remember in school using graphing calculators where I would plug an equation into the calculator, hit enter, and see an image appear on my screen. So I think it's amazing to know that these students are kind of physically and collaboratively creating that image, forming such a meaningful connection to the concept behind that equation. So That is our math class. And now we'll move on to a quick discussion of our elective classes. So in addition to these academic classes that we just talked about, each student has a fun elective class built into their schedule. You can see the range of classes listed here. Students would be assigned one of these classes, and then it would alternate with phys ed every other day in their schedule. So next, I'd like to move on to a quick discussion of the use of technology at Landmark. Technology is an important topic to cover because Landmark's commitment is to the remediation and development of our students' reading and writing skill mechanics. So our use of technology really reflects that priority. Landmark uses technology as an educational tool that supports and enhances our curriculum, but we want to maximize opportunities for our students to be forging and strengthening their language storage and retrieval pathways through the practice of their reading and writing skills. So we're careful to use technology in ways that don't bypass those important opportunities. Our approach to technology includes a digital citizenship curriculum that focuses on different skills for different grade levels, but encompasses skills like password creation and safety, email etiquette and expectations, sharing information safely and appropriately online, identifying reliable sources, and media balance and well-being. So moving on to the topic of homework, many of our students report that compared to their previous homework experience, homework at Landmark feels more personalized and more appropriate to the level of challenge that's right for them. This is due in part to what I mentioned earlier about the way that classes are grouped here. When classes are thoughtfully grouped based on skill level and learning style, teachers can more easily tailor the volume and complexity of assignments for that particular class. In addition to that, our philosophy on homework is that it should be a practice and review of information taught in class. So we are not introducing new skills or concepts as homework assignments. The assignments instead act as a reinforcement of daily lessons. This also means that our goal is a much greater sense of independence for our students, that they should truly feel like they can complete these assignments on their own without your help. And we hear from parents what a huge difference that makes, that an improved homework experience feels more manageable and it can relieve stress for the whole family. So continuing with the after-school experience, Landmark also offers a range of after-school activities for our students to participate in. The model of our after-school activity program has varied during the pandemic as we've adjusted to new health and safety protocols. Activities are currently offered Tuesday through Thursday from 3 to 4:30. The specific offerings and days available may vary throughout the year. We keep families updated on these changes, but this is a list of activities that we've offered over the past several years, encompassing a wide range of interests and talents that our students have. We also have an after-school sports program for students, for middle school students, grades 6, 7, and 8, in which we compete against other local private schools. We've had to make some adjustments to this program during the pandemic as well, but here are the sports that we typically offer. We also keep a middle school athletics calendar up to date on our website. And in addition to our school year program, Landmark's Elementary Middle School offers a 5-week summer program for students entering grades 2 through 7. This program can be used as a transition for new students joining us in the fall, or it can be a standalone program for students to boost their skills and gain strategies to take back with them to another setting. For our 2022 summer program, we're offering a half-day program beginning at 8 a.m. and ending by 12:30. It includes 3 academic classes that follow a very similar approach to our academic year classes that were discussed earlier in this presentation. So the one-on-one tutorial focusing on each student's individual literacy skill goals, the language arts class with its emphasis on writing, and a language structure and literature class, which examines the structure of words and narrative concepts in short stories, and also works on oral expression skills using poetry. The day also includes 2 20-minute breaks, one for snack time and unstructured downtime, and one for a more structured recreational activity time to really help continue the social connections that students form in the classroom. This program does require the same application process as our school year program, but you can also apply for the summer program in the school year at the same time using one application and one process. And to wrap up this presentation, I'd like to zoom out and talk a bit about the culture of Landmark as an institution. An important part of this culture is Landmark's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. For us, this commitment means creating a community and culture that embraces the full picture of each individual's identity, their race, religion, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, age, and disability. This work includes acknowledging and working to dismantle systemic racism, prejudice, and discrimination. And we also recognize that this is ongoing work, an ongoing process of implementing and evaluating the initiatives that will strengthen this commitment. So this year, we've created new DEI coordinator positions to oversee initiatives at each of our campuses. These initiatives have included a school-wide self-assessment process, compiling resources for diversifying our curriculum, as well as faculty trainings and facilitated discussions on topics like anti-racism and the importance of talking to our youngest students about race. These trainings and discussions have provided faculty with opportunities to practice navigating challenging topics and conversations so that we can better support this kind of communication among our students. We share this information with you as prospective families because we know that this is a partnership, and for families that join our community, their commitment to these values will play an equally important role in Landmark's culture. So with that, I'd like to thank you all again for being here this morning, for giving us your time and the opportunity to share this information with you. I'm going to turn things back over to Katie now as we move on to the panel portion of the visit.
Thank you, Emily. Very comprehensive. It's a lot to digest, families, but hopefully the next 20 or 30 minutes will really help you understand all that was just shared with you. Before we get to hear from the students, we're going to get to hear from some of the administrators and faculty and staff at the elementary and middle school campus. And then about 10-15 minutes from now, the students will log on. So I'd like to introduce some of the folks that have joined the call, and they're going to be ready to answer your questions. Again, at any point, feel free to post a question in that chat bar. If you go to the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see the box with the 3 lines, and that's how you utilize that chat feature. So to start us off, I'd like to introduce you to our headmaster, Bob Bruto. You're muted, Bob.
Doing my technology protocol. I was muted. Welcome, everyone. It's so great to see so many families on this call. And Emily, thank you so much for that incredibly comprehensive overview. I'm one of the very fortunate people who has been with Landmark since we opened our doors in 1971 with 40 students. And what I'm most proud of is that the mission that Landmark started, working with kids with dyslexia, language-based learning disabilities, the nature of the program, has very much been the foundation of everything we do. Landmark's been mission driven from day one. And while we've added experience, we've added neuroscience, we've added research, we've added all the things that have transpired and become a very different institution in terms of size and all the rest, Landmark is focused on the individual student who shows up here. So if we have 465 students, I love saying we have 465 different programs. It's one-to-one, it's tailored for each student, it's grouped for each student. And I also love to say that Landmark is a mission with the school. We are really driven to create awareness, teacher training well outside of Landmark, ways of helping students who can never get to our campuses by working with school systems, online programs, government people, and we're just driven to make a difference. And so when you meet people on the Landmark campus, you're meeting mission-driven individuals whose job it is and their passion is to help the students who come here to grow. So that's an exciting thing. And we have about 80 people who've been here at least 20 years, and new people and veterans even longer than that. And everybody is so passionate about the mission, including the students. I will tell you, when I see drop off on the elementary middle school campus, those kids are jumping out of their cars and vans. Some of them have backpacks bigger than their bodies, and they are just full of life and energy. And some of the middle school kids are a lot taller than me, and they just give me, a, hey, Mr. B, as they walk by, and they're happy to be in school. They're identified with adults who they know well, who they trust. And it's just exciting. So I want to welcome you. I'm available for questions today, and you can feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm always available. So thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Bob. We appreciate you being here. Next, I'd like to introduce Claire Sullivan, the head of the elementary middle school campus.
Good morning, everyone. As Kay said, I'm Claire Sullivan, and I'm the head of EMS. And I would just agree with everything that Bob said. He said it so eloquently. When he's talking about arrival, I also always think about dismissal. Sometimes it's really hard to get our kids off campus. So even when the cars or vehicles pull up, just trying to get them to leave. It's a nice sentiment. They love being here, and they're excited to be here, and they have such positive experiences through their days. And a huge part of that is the connection that we make with families. So we're really excited to meet you all and to have you be part of this process and this journey for your student. Thank you for coming today. We look forward to your questions, but I know there's others to meet as well. But again, we really just look forward to meeting you and working with you as a team. It's definitely like a team process through here. But thank you.
Thank you, Claire. All right, a few more really caring, committed individuals to introduce you to, and then please start thinking about your questions. I'd like to introduce you to Kirk Swanson, and Kirk can explain his role at Landmark campus.
Thanks, Katie. Good morning, everybody. My name's Kirk Swanson. I'm the Dean of Students here at the Landmark Elementary Middle School. And I'm glad you're here, and we get to see each other and talk, and look forward to meeting you in person on this beautiful day with the kids are outside enjoying the weather. It's beautiful to be out. So I'm the Dean of Students, like the assistant principal, and I work closely with students. I'm involved with student life, and I work with teachers, faculty, staff, and parents as well. But we're always working, all of us are working on what we can do to make things better for our students here. Obviously, in the classroom is the most important reason they're here, but outside the classroom with events, recess periods, special luncheons, after school activities we started this year again, and for elementary and middle school, and that's been going well after school. So definitely involved with a lot of things, and I'm glad you're here and look forward to answering some of your questions. Thank you for coming today. Enjoy your visit.
Thank you, Kirk. All right, next on the call, I believe Deb Blanchard.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Debbie Blanchard. I'm the academic dean, so the complement to Kirk's dean of students. My primary responsibilities are obviously the academic portion of the kids' day. I see my role as doing whatever is needed to have kids make the most of their academic time at Landmark. We know that typically our time with kids is short-lived, and we want to make the most of their academic experience. I work with a great team of teachers, and academic advisors and department heads. So welcome.
Thank you. Speaking of your team, Megan Stevens, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Katie. I'm Megan Stevens. I'm the reading supervisor and the testing coordinator. I work very closely with Debbie on all things that have to do with reading, the one-to-one tutorial, how that's overseen by advisors. And I also have another part of my job, I still work closely with Debbie, on testing and how we assess where our students are both formally and informally so we can make sure that we can show the progress that they're making.
Wonderful. So hopefully that orients you a little bit to the incredible team that supports the students at the elementary middle school campus. And I'd really, we're eager to know what's on your mind, what questions you have that we can clarify. These panelists are excited to help answer questions. So please, again, the chat bar is in the bottom right-hand corner. Don't be shy. Throw a question out there. We have a few minutes with these administrators before we turn it over to more of a student-facing conversation. So please, if you think you have a question that might be appropriate from one of our panelists, fire away. Thank you, Catherine, for being brave with the first question. Do we teach foreign language at the elementary middle school? Who would like to tackle that one? Deb, thank you.
No, we do not. We didn't, excuse me, we do not have any foreign language. The closest we've come is some clubs who toyed around with sign language, but there's no foreign language in our curriculum.
Do you want to explain why?
Sure. The main reason for that is just our emphasis that we have to do on English. We have such a heavy emphasis as a language-based model. Our kids have about 4 periods a day where they're working on the intricacies of the English language. They have a reading class, they have a written expression class, they have an oral language class. So all that is sufficient for taxing them and keeping them up. So that's the reasoning.
Perfect. Thank you. And coming in fast now. Catherine, to answer your question, there is ASL offered at the high school level, and our guidance department completes a waiver for students from the foreign language perspective, so it doesn't end up being an issue for college acceptances, things like that. Okay, Kirk, this one can come to you. Is the school calendar the same as public schools?
Yes. Is that, you said me? Yes, we do. Please. Yes. So half our students are funded by their towns and half are private. And so because of the funded students, we follow public school regulations and certifications. So we do follow a 180-day calendar. And that's posted ahead of time. So you can see we do have some half days for faculty training and in-service time. So we do follow the public school calendar.
Great. There's 2 really good questions around transition, the length of time that students might spend at Landmark and how they might know if the student's ready to transition back to a public school or a different setting. Does somebody want to take on how we support transition? Claire?
Yeah, I'm happy to start that answer. Because of our academic advising system, which is so unique to our programming, your advisor works directly with the family and the public school if you're with a public school. We also have public school liaisons as well, and they are constantly monitoring how your student is doing, and we'll have those conversations if we feel on our behalf that your student is ready to transition out of Landmark or if this is still the appropriate placement. And because of all of our testing that Megan does and the academic programming, you can really monitor that and to assess, okay, the student needs more years at Landmark, the high school might be appropriate. We're constantly evaluating that system, but When students do transition out, it's usually at the right time for them to do so. And that's a assessment that us as a school will advise you on, but also as a family, you'll make that decision for yourselves if that's the appropriate time. And our students tend to do really well when they're ready to leave Landmark. The length of time that they're here really varies. It's so individualistic. As Bob said, their program is so individualized that their length of time here is also individualized. We have some students who start here in elementary and we see them all the way through middle and they go on to our high school and are very successful there. And other students do a shorter stint here, perhaps just 2 or 3 years, and then they are at another public school or a local private school. So it's really hard to say how long students stay. I've seen just such variety over the years.
Right. Yeah, it's well said, Claire. We like to think about logical next steps for all of our students. And as Claire said, the academic advisors work really closely with the families on skill levels, on social emotional development, on all the aspects of an individual student. And I think, some students stay here 2 years, 3 years, some students stay here 7 years, but it depends on the individual. And the thing I love to say is that when a student leaves us, maybe goes to a local private school and then competes against us in sports, that's the worst case scenario, but they're in the right environment for their academic learning. So all is well. But it's really one student at a time, logical next steps. Where are they in the development process? So.
Thank you. Kirk, can you speak to how we orient new students to campus, both academically and socially, for that transition in?
Yes, so we do have a big orientation program for our students. We do have one that's in the summer that we invite the elementary students that are new and some new middle school students. We have orientation activities around just getting to know Landmark and what's going on and answering questions, meeting some new people and students. And then when they come in the fall, we do have a orientation program that the first day is usually half day, and it's an orientation day for our kids. And we split them up into groups, by age, and they go around the campus and they meet different people. They meet me and Mrs. Sullivan, Mrs. Blanchard. They meet the nurse, see what's out in the gym, and they just get orientated. And we do try to buddy them up. Peer leaders are involved, and and there are activities that involve that too. But we definitely want them to feel immersed in the program, and we definitely want them to feel comfortable being here. And when you talk to the kids, the panel, it's not rehearsed. We don't tell them how to answer questions, but they definitely are involved in that, and they feel pretty good once they get here and they meet some kids right away. That's the key thing, to feel part of the community. But we do try to orientate kids as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Debbie, could you speak to how we group students on for their math classes?
Oh, yes. I was hoping we'd have time to get to that question. If you're not monitoring the chat, the question was specific to math. Do you group students by skill? And we do. And I think it's important to say we group every class based on skill level. So rather than just assign kids to certain classes based on their grade, instead, each department head makes groupings of students within that department that makes sense based on what the kids need. So the language arts department head is focusing on written expression. Those groupings are going to be different than the math department head groupings because he's focusing on their math skills. So a student, it's the best way to make each class just at the right level. Our goal is to make a class that's not too easy and not too hard with every class throughout the student's day. And it's a necessity, really, because of the profile of our students. Some students are really strong in math and have difficulty with the language skills. We have some kids who are at the same level in all their classes, but it gives us the flexibility to individualize. That's why Bob says you have 400 something individual programs, because every kid's program is a little different. So the end result is that the students have different peers in each of their classes, which I think they like. Their grouping in social studies is probably going to be slightly different than their grouping in oral expression. So it makes it very tailored. Anyway.
Debbie, there was a follow-up along those lines. Within language arts, will there also be different class groupings for children who might be stronger in reading and struggle more with writing?
Yes, yes. So the department heads really dive into those thick files that you send us. If you've started the application process, you know we require a lot of information, but the department heads use that and they try to make nuanced class groupings. So they'll make a grouping, these kids all have X as part of their profile, but these kids are strong decoders, poor writers. These kids are poor, stronger writers, whatever. And they just try to make the groupings as tight as they can. There's obviously some variation, but they strive to make, have the subtleties in the groupings reflect the profiles of the kids.
Thank you. Couple questions, and I know I'm missing some, but there was a question about learning profile. Can a student just have attentional needs without a diagnosis of an SLD? I put my email address in the chat bar if anyone wanted to send me testing to preview. If you have concerns as to whether your child might be a good fit, we're always happy to provide you with some initial feedback. And other questions about the interview process, I think, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we wrap up today, Emily will finish the presentation with a little bit more information about next steps and what that includes. I think we're getting there with these questions. Some more questions about summer program. All of that information is on the website. I'm not sure if the student panelists have attended the summer program, but I'll do a quick question to them to see if any of the 4 students who are expecting to join the call might be able to speak to their experience in the summer program, as many of our students use that as a way to transition into their landmark experience. Okay, another question. Wendy asked, are elementary students with the middle school students? Deb, you want to explain?
Yeah, I should have indicated that. No, we have a separation between elementary and middle. So, and we consider our elementary program goes through 5th grade. So 5th and below are grouped together, and then 6, 7, and 8.
Oh, I love this question from Sarah. How do we celebrate students' strengths and their passions? Who wants to take that on? And then we'll transition to, I know some of the students have started to join, so they could even address that question. Claire, did you want to say something?
I'm sure, I'm happy to take that. I think we're such a unique environment because all the students come here and they're finally with other students who learn in a similar way that they do. And so there's just that alone allows us to then focus on those other parts of them. They finally are able to take a deep breath, and we're able to see some of those, since they're not struggling here, we're able to really tap into what they're really great at. And we really celebrate that in so many avenues, like the one-on-one tutorial. As Deb mentioned, all the different classes that's individualized. We have a whole host of sports that are available, especially to middle school students, and clubs that are open to elementary and middle school students. And we're constantly changing those depending on what the students are interested in. We have a lot of just activities during the day, and just constantly involving them in the process. We really believe that that's a huge part of them buying into the program and being extremely successful. And I'm curious to see what the student panelists would say about that as well. Like, how do they feel like we promote and foster their strengths and what they're interested in? So I'd love to hear what they have to say with that.
Let's transition to the students. So this period right now is the students' milk break period. So this is when they get to have a yummy snack, play outside, as Kirk mentioned, on a beautiful day. So we had a few more volunteers who I think have now opted to enjoy their snack and go outside. But I do appreciate the students who are giving up their free time to join the call. So first I'll have Emily introduce herself. Emily, if you could say your name, your grade, and where you're from, that would be excellent.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm in 6th grade, and I'm from Topsfield.
Thanks for being here, Emily. All right, is Jacob on the call?
Hi, my name's Jacob. I'm from Melrose.
What grade are you in?
5th.
Perfect. Thank you. Shay?
Hi, my name's Shay. I'm in 6th grade and I'm from Marblehead.
Thanks, Shay. And then Leanna? Liana?
Hi, my name's Liana, and I'm in 4th grade.
And where are you from?
Beverly.
Beverly. Perfect. Thank you, students. All right, so for those of you who just joined the call, there was a great question posed about how Landmark celebrates students' strengths and their talents. Do any of you feel like you can speak to that question? That means answer the question. You can raise your hand. I'm starting with a doozy. That's a big question. How does Landmark celebrate who you are and what you're good at? Yeah, go ahead, Shay.
Well, we have a Landmark Cares Week, and that helps celebrate that kids are dyslexic, and yeah. And also the teachers are very nice, and they show like that that being dyslexic isn't just, it's okay, and the teachers are very nice about it, and yeah.
Nice job. Anybody want to add anything to that question? All right, we're going to move on. This is a fun one. The question is, what's the best part of your day? I'm going to ask all of you to answer that one. Your favorite part of your day. Emily, do you want to go first?
My favorite part of the day, I like tutorial a lot.
So, Emily, they just learned that tutorial is where we're working on the elements that are your weaker points. So can you explain why that would somehow be your favorite part of the day, if that's the day where you're working on your areas of weakness?
Because it's a one-on-one with just my tutorial teacher, and I get to focus on what I need to do, and I'm just by myself, so we can do whatever I need.
Great. I'm glad that's your best part of your day. Jake, do you want to talk about your favorite part of the day?
The specials and tutorial.
What elective do you have this year?
So today I have gym and woodworking for my specials.
Yeah, what are you doing in woodworking right now?
So I'm making a boathouse, but the woodworking teacher was out today, so I got to use the hot glue guns and make something of myself, of whatever I want.
Nice. Shay, what's your favorite part of the day?
Probably math, because I'm good at it.
Is math at Landmark feel a little different than math from your last school?
Yeah, they teach it a little bit different, which the way they teach it, I think, is better for me.
What's different about the way we teach it at Landmark?
It's not so much about being the fastest and being fast. It's more getting accurate answers, and they make it easier to understand.
Nice. Students, you're doing such a good job. These are hard questions that I'm throwing at you, so keep up the good work. Anna, I didn't get to you. What's your favorite part of your day?
My favorite part is probably social studies because we get to learn about the United States of America a lot.
Nice. Great. How many students are in your social studies class?
Including me, 6.
Great. Good. All right, families, what else would you like to know from the students? We'll keep them on the call for just a few more minutes before we let them get to their third period class. Anything else you'd like to hear from the student perspective? While the families think, oh, I love this. This is a great question. Is it easy to make friends at Landmark? Jake, go ahead.
It's very easy. By the end of the year of last school year, I made friends with my whole homeroom class.
Nice. I think he captured it. Emily, yeah, go ahead.
It's super easy to stay friends with your old friends and your new friends, because everyone's super nice, and the teachers are really nice too.
Emily, I'm so glad you added that in because I know that's always a concern for students leaving their old school and losing their friends. So I'm glad to hear that that wasn't the case for you, that it's easy to stay in touch. Really good. I love this last question, guys. Okay, what one word would you use to describe Landmark School? One word. Go ahead, Jake.
Amazing.
Why that word, Jake?
Because it's super fun here and everything that we do is easier, and so yeah.
Great. Liana, you had your hand up. Your word.
Beautiful.
Ooh, beautiful. You mean the campus itself or what?
Everything.
It's a good word. Emily, do you have a word?
I think fun.
Good. Shay, you're last. What word do you think?
I think amazing as well.
Two amazing. Awesome, guys. Did any of the 4 of you, just by show of hands, attend the summer program before joining the school year? Looks like just Shay. Can you talk about if you liked the summer program?
Yeah, I really like the summer program because
Why?
It's a simulation of what it's like here, but it's only 3 periods. So you still get to hang out with your friends at home and make new friends that could possibly be joining you in the school year.
Shay, simulation. What a good word. I'm impressed. All right. When you first arrived at Landmark, and then we'll wrap up and let you guys go, what was it like when you first came here? I'm sure you were nervous, excited, lots of feelings. What was that like? Emily, go ahead.
I was nervous because I didn't want to leave my old friends. I was also excited because I didn't like getting taken out at my old school, but here I don't get taken out of classes.
So you like that everybody has the tutorial?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. Anybody else want to talk about what it was like when they first got here? Go ahead, Jake.
My first day last year, I was crying.
Because why?
I really didn't want to come here, and by the end of the year, I loved it. I didn't want school year ended.
Jake, thank you so much for being so honest about that experience. Shay or Leanna, do you want to say anything else about arriving to Landmark?
I was the same as Emily.
A little nervous, yeah. Shay, if you had to make the decision again, would you still come to Landmark if it were completely up to you?
100%.
Awesome. That's really nice to hear. Liana, anything you wanted to add? No. Panelists, as always, you guys are so brave. There were a lot of families on this call. Congratulations for being so brave and speaking so clearly and honestly about your experiences. I know it goes a long way for the families to be able to hear from you directly. So thanks for giving up your milk break time. We really appreciate it. I'll let you guys get off the call so you can make it to third period. Bye, students.
Great job, guys, girls. Good job. And I want everyone to know that was not rehearsed. We didn't tell them to answer. They spoke from the heart.
Absolutely. All right, and thank you so much to our EMS faculty who also took their milk break time to join us here today. So we appreciate hearing from them directly. At this point, I'd like to pass it back to Emily, who will quickly go over next steps in the application process. Again, we understand that we're hitting that time limit, so if you do need to log off the call, no worries, families. You will get this via email. So over to you, Emily.
Thank you, Katie. And thanks again to the faculty who are still on the call. We really appreciate your time. And I'm so glad that you all got to hear from our students today. It's always the best part of these visits. So after what you've heard and what you've learned today, if you decide that you'd like to move forward with our application process, our application is available as a modifiable PDF on our website, and you can begin that process at any time. So as you start to submit the main application forms, members of our admission team will start to work with you. So an admission counselor will reach out to you to confirm what we've received and let you know exactly what we still need in order to complete your child's application file and for us to begin a formal review of all of that information. Once we're formally reviewing the complete file, that review process often includes follow-up phone conversations with evaluators or educators or anyone that you give us permission to follow up with and talk with about your child's learning needs and learning profile. At the end of that review, we would then determine whether to move on with our final admission appointment. And that final admission appointment includes a placement screening as well as an interview process. In the past, that appointment was in person on campus. We did move to a virtual format during the pandemic, and we are continuing with a virtual format this year. So the appointment that we would schedule as that final admission appointment would include a Google Meet screening where a member of our team would work with your child to take them through some tasks to confirm their learning profile and current literacy skill levels. And it would also include a virtual interview where one of us would get a chance to chat with your child, get to know them better, and talk with them about Landmark and answer their questions. And we typically are able to provide a final admission decision right on the day of that appointment. And we would also give you an update about space availability at that time. So if we have a space to offer, we would confirm that on that day. If we're not sure, we would do our best to give you a timeline for when that information might be available. I also want to mention that you can apply for our summer program and the school year using the same application and going through the same process. Typically, if you're just applying for our summer program, we can provide you with an admission decision right after the formal review. We typically do not need to schedule the appointment in order to make a decision just for the summer program. So that is the process. I want to thank you all again for being here today. We really appreciate your time and the opportunity to share information with you, to hear your questions, and I hope that you decide to move forward with the application process. So enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. Thank you again.